You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, season 3, episode 86, remembering the World Series at Wrigley. Don't forget to listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to the podcast, follow on all the socials, 670 on Twitter, Instagram, Fly the W on Facebook, of course, email Crawly and I at flythew670@gmail.com. And Crawly, today we're talking about, believe it or not, on this date 8 years ago, Wrigley Field was hosting its first World Series game since 1945.
Now, Dustin, I got to tell you, I was at game 6 and 7 in 2003 versus the Marlins. And I remember in game 6, I was sitting there and I was like, we're 5 outs from the World Series. And I remember like in my head, like coming up with a game plan so I could be the first to get a shirt and a hat and all that stuff. And then everything happened bad. And then game 7, it just was so deflating that when we got to 2016 in the NLCS, I mean, that was one of I would say if someone asked me, Crawly, if you could relive one Cub game your whole life, what would it be? It would be game 6 of the NLCS. I thought that was just, the crowd was into it from the beginning. They were chanting Kershaw's name. The crowd just never, ever was down, never gave up. And that was a game where there was 27 up, 27 down. Kyle had a pickoff play and there was 2 double plays. So it wasn't a perfect game or anything, but there's only 27 batters that the Dodgers had. It was easily one of the greatest games of my life. But I remember after they won the NLCS and Wrigleyville's going nuts, like maybe like the next day, I'm like, okay, I had like a little free time. I bolted down to Wrigley and I'm like, I got to be the first to get Wrigley stuff. So I don't know if people remember this, and I got this is on 670 The Score YouTube channel right there on YouTube. There's a picture of me. I got one of those shirts that said, I ain't afraid of no goat. So it's the old Ghostbusters played with the goat in the red lines here. But I went there to see it for a couple of reasons. I wanted to see, you look at Wrigley, this right here is a photo with the Cubs flag and the Indians flag. And so, I mean, it was real. And this is sad because this building's going down. They're going to replace it with like a high rise. But the old Emus Catulli building, if Cub fans know what I'm talking about, it's that building on right field, right on Sheffield, and it said Emus Catulli, which was Latin for "Let's Go Cubs" or "Let's Go Whelps." It's not an exact translation, but it had AC and then a bunch of numbers, and then the AC was Latin for Anno Catulli, the year of the Cub. And so what they always had was the years since they won the division, years since they won the pennant, and years since they won the World Series. So as long as I could remember, I'd look up there and you'd see the numbers. And then I remember in 2008, they had to add a number for the 100 years since they won the World Series. But this time the building had 0000108. So to me, mentally thinking about that was just insane. And like I said, I thinking back to 2003, I'm like, I want all the memorabilia. So I ran around. I got hats. I got programs, T-shirts, pennants, everything you could think of. I ran and grabbed like a couple of everything. But the one thing that I dreamed about were patches. I know it sounds dumb, but I wanted, the Cubs blew it in 2003. The Red Sox came in 2004 to Wrigley for the first time in, I don't even remember how long. And I just remember seeing all the Red Sox fan had that World Series champion patch on their jersey. And then, of course, 2005, the White Sox win it. Now, every time I go to a Cubs White Sox game, they have their World Series champions. I don't even want to talk about the Cardinals. All I said is, God, I want a World Series patch for my jersey. And so I grabbed some of those, and it was amazing. And so the day comes, this day, 8 years ago, and what I remember is that they closed like every street. There was only for through traffic, and you needed to have ID. No ID, they were not going to let you get through the streets. Nearly every street surrounding Wrigley Field was closed. And there was a police presence like I never saw before. And I remember like helicopters. It was like out of a war movie, like just choppers, like all over the place. I'm like,
sending a chopper.
Right. This is just nuts. And so I get down there and I park my car. I got the 383 stickers to park down there, but I got to put it back there every 24 hours. I got a buddy at Irving Park. So I get down there before they close everything out. And so I'm camped out. I'm spending, the weekend at Wrigley Field. And so this is a picture I took of me with the marquee Game 1, Indians versus Cubs. And then right across the street from Murphy's on the corner of Waveland and Sheffield, that's where Fox World Series, that's where Fox Sports set up their whole thing. It's usually parking. And right across the street, Murphy's had this sign. Pete Rose says, bet on the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
You can always count on Murphy's for a good sign.
Yeah.
But Dustin, the thing I remember is just the atmosphere was just so festive. Everybody was so happy. And I remember walking in to the World Series, like into Wrigley, getting scanned, getting checked, and just being like, I'm actually here. And they handed us those W towels that had all the names of the players on them.
Yeah.
And, you know, Billy Williams throws out the first pitch and Ryan Dempster's firing up the crowd. He's out there. And my brother flew in from Colorado, and he was actually, this is hilarious. His flight, he got off. The next flight behind him, there was a fire and everyone was stranded on the plane.
Oh, jeez.
So anyone that was on that plane after my brothers couldn't get in there. And so my brother's a huge Cub fan, obviously family thing. There's a picture of me and my brother, and it was kind of a cool night at Wrigley. Not bad, but cooler night. And I just remember sitting there watching the game, and it was Josh Tomlin versus Kyle Hendricks. And if people remember, Kyle Hendricks was the ERA leader in 2016. He had the lowest ERA in all of baseball. People forget that. Lester and Arrieta were the bigger stories, but Kyle was just phenomenal. And, you know, they split the first game. Corey Kluber beat John Lester in game 1. Arrieta beats Trevor Bauer in game 2. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, we got this one here. This is one that I kind of had check marked. Goes, you know, this is going to the Cubs. Tomlin's not that great. He wasn't even supposed to be on the roster. The only reason he was on the roster was because Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar got injured. So if those guys hadn't gotten injured, and even Bauer hurt himself on the drone. You remember that? He cut his finger.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like they were kind of trying to patch their offense together. And so I'm saying to myself, okay, this is the one that the Cubs need, because I knew game 4 was Kluber versus John Lackey, and John Lackey stunk it up in the postseason that year. So that one I already had in the Indians column. So I figured, okay, Cubs take game 3 with Hendricks versus Tomlin, and then they lose game 4. It's tied at 2 apiece, and then Lester and Arrieta and Hendricks, we can take 2 out of 3 of those. I was absolutely confident. But my whole plan had to do with the Cubs winning game 3. And I don't know if people remember this, but Josh Tomlin's dad had a medical issue, right? And he was paralyzed from the waist, from the chest down, and he almost died. And he was in a rehab for 2 months. And finally he got out. They got him on a wheelchair. They got him to Wrigley Field, and Tomlin pitched the game of his life. It was a pitcher's duel between Hendricks and Tomlin, and both of those guys exit the game, and there's no score. And so you're sitting there, you're like, okay, a little bit nervous here, but you know, because Cleveland had that awesome bullpen, but Tomlin went 4 2/3 inning. He didn't give up a run, and Hendricks went 4 1/3. He didn't give up a run. Justin Grimm relieved him and got a huge double play with the bases loaded and 1 out, and he was fired up. But it wasn't until the 7th inning that Coco Crisp ended up hitting a RBI single, 1-0, and now it's getting late, right? It's in the bottom of the 7th, Cubs don't score. Bottom of the 8th, Cubs don't score. You get to the 9th, and the Cubs have runners at 2nd and 3rd, 2 outs for Javi Baez. Crowd's chanting, Javi, Javi. And he strikes out on a high fastball. And Dustin, I mean, you could, like, it was like somebody put a dagger in my heart. I was like, I can't believe they lost that game. And my brother's always like a pretty positive, upbeat guy. There's a picture of us after the game. And if you could see this picture, I got like my hat pulled low. Like I'm trying to smile. I'm trying to put on a brave face, but I'm like, I knew we were going to lose game 4. And I'm like, you're down 3-1. And I know the Cubs were good and could come back, but that's hard, Dustin, 3-1 to come back and have to win 2 of those on the road. That's not an easy ask, right?
Not easy. No, not easy at all.
So I wake up game 4, and that was the only postseason game 4 of the World Series that I did not attend in the 2000s. I did not have a ticket for that. And I had about 8 friends, 4 who flew in from out of town. And we all just kind of hung out. I hung out with my brother a little bit. And, before the game, there's a picture of us in front of the marquee. And it was weird. You'd see people like Peter Gammons and Mark DeRosa and all these people. Like my buddy lived on Clifton right across from Wrigley, and they were setting up right next to his place. So I, talking to all these people. I saw Pat, wished him good luck on his call and all that stuff. But it was fun, man. It was just a wild time. This is a picture of me and my buddies. The streets were packed. Here we are with the zombie guys. We ended up, I don't know if you remember this, Dustin, they were charging ridiculous prices to get in bars. HVAC, $250 per person for a watch party that included drinks, pizza, and wings. Old Crow, $225 for admission and entree and appetizer. Barleycorn, John Barleycorn, that's gone now. $250 to get in, $500 for a table. Deuces was $200 to get in, $500 a table. We ended up finding this bar called Low Country. It had like Cajun food, and it was a brand new place, and I don't think they were really kind of set up for it. It was $100 to sit there and get in all you could drink. And so I'm watching the game, and they had all these TVs downstairs. It was awesome. We're watching the game, and, Cubs got out to an early lead, and I'm going to myself, maybe I was wrong. I should have had more faith. Maybe John Lackey's going to turn this around. Cubs up 1-0. Dexter Fowler with a double. I want to say RBI. Rizzo drove him in. But then Lackey gave up 3 runs, 2 in the second, 1 in the third. Bullpen came in, gave up 1 in the 6th, and then a big 3-run home run off Rondon in the 7th. And the Cubs lose this one 7-2. They're down 3-1. But I said, you know what, man? My friends are in town. They haven't been around. I'm not going to sit here moping I'm going to try to make the best of it. So we ended up playing Flippy Cup at Low Country. We literally had the whole bar. It's like a relay race, drinking a beer, flipping it, and landing it on the top there. It was out of control. We had as much fun. We drank them dry. We had free, all you could drink till 11 o'clock. I think we were done at 10. We drank the taps dry.
Well, I was going to say, you guys got after it, huh?
We got after it, and that took us to Game 5, and my dad was going to meet up for me. And my dad was born in 1946, the year after the Cubs last were in the World Series. So at the time, I was 40 and he was 70. 70 years, he'd never seen the Cubs in the World Series. And I went, this is, Ernie Banks died in 2015. He's buried at Graceland Cemetery. And I went to his grave, and at the time, it was this tiny little grave. They redid it after they had another ceremony, but I put a couple of those W flags down by Ernie's grave, and I just,
that's cool.
I said a little prayer, and I said, you know what, Ernie, I said, I don't, if the Cubs win the World Series, great. All I want is for my dad to see the Cubs win the World Series, get one game. I'm not asking for a World Series. I just want him to see a World Series win at Wrigley Field. How awesome would that be? So as me and my dad and my brother were hanging out. My brother didn't have tickets to the game. He hung out with a friend. And this is us in front of the Harry Carey statue. And so it's John Lester versus Trevor Bauer. And I'm saying to myself, hey, I think this is really, the Cubs have a chance in this one. But, it's just like I said, to win 3 in a row is going to be hard. And that game, Dustin, that one, I was on pins and needles the entire time. And that was a game that the Cubs were down 1-0 early. And then Chris Bryant, and this is why I'm never going to boo a guy like Chris Bryant, right? He hits a home run to tie it up. And that really, to me, changed not just that game. That, to me, changed the series. I thought that was the moment that it all changed. I mean, Jose Ramirez hit a home run in the second, and the Cubs are down 1-0. And I saw that bullpen, because this is still when the bullpens were out on the field,
Yeah.
And I see their bullpen, and their bullpen was absolutely just lights out. That was the thing about Cleveland. Once you got to Andrew Miller and Shaw and all those guys, you were just like, it wasn't going to be easy. They weren't going to make it easy on you. And so I'm getting nervous. And Bryant hit that home run, and the place just erupted. And then Rizzo followed it up with a double, Zobrist singles, Russell singles. And now the Cubs, are on the board. They score a couple of runs. David Ross sack fly, and the Cubs are up 3-1. And you're saying, okay, pretty good. But then Francisco Lindor, who I thought would have been the MVP, either him or Corey Kluber would have been the MVP if Cleveland would have won it. Lindor had an RBI single off Lester in the 6th. That made it a 3-2 game. And so Lester, think about this. When we're talking about bullpens and all the bullpen usage in this postseason, to think about how, the Cubs basically, just saying, all right, we're going to go with John Lester, for 6 innings. Carl Edwards went for 1/3 of an inning and gave up a hit. And then Aroldis Chapman going 2 2/3. I mean, I sat there just like with my hand over my mouth for about 3 innings. I was so nervous. I was a wreck. Like, honestly, Dustin, I don't know about you. I don't know if I don't enjoy World Series, like those type of games. It's so anxious, like just sitting there. Like I just get nervous. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, we know the Cubs won the World Series, and when they play the Game 7 back on TV, or I've listened to it on the score, and I wonder if they really won it still today, right? As silly as that may sound, but I still get nervous listening back to a replay and watching a replay of the game because it was so, is this real? And when you're working it and not like having, it was not fun to work it. It really wasn't because, I get up early in the morning, those games go late. No drinking, got to be on my A game. And it was not, I didn't really enjoy it until the parade. Honestly, I really didn't. I mean, when they won the World Series, I drank a beer, I took a shower, and I went to work. I drank 1 beer, took a shower, and went to work.
I didn't
And
really.
I mean, it was rough. It was rough because as a fan, it was super emotional. It's super stressful in the business because of what's going on. It was a rough couple of weeks.
I can only imagine. I just know that when they won, I was holding back the tears because I was just like, I can't believe I saw the Cubs win a World Series game. I can't believe my dad got to see it. And it was really like an emotional moment for us, and we had been going, my dad and I have been season ticket holders since 2004. And we've been going to a ton of games. We saw them lose in 2007 to the Diamondbacks, got their butts kicked in 2 games in 2008. 2015 was really tough. We were both, my dad and I were both going through some things and watching them get swept. We really thought we loved that 2015 team, that got swept by the Mets in the NLCS. And my dad said, hey, man, don't worry. We're going to be back next year and we're going to finish the job. And so to see that was really a moment. And so when it's weird because now tonight the Yankees play 3 at home, and that's how it was for the Cubs, 2 in Cleveland, 3 at home.
Yeah, 2-3-2. Yep.
When I think about it that night and 8 years since the Cubs were in the World Series. And sometimes, Dustin, it seems like it was yesterday. I'm looking around at like all the memorabilia, like in my bar, like all the memorabilia, like right here is like right across the wall, like all my World Series stuff. And I just, every day I look at it and it still is, I know people are gonna say, okay, marriage. And of course your kid's being born, but it was one of the greatest moments of my life that, I know for you it's probably hectic. For me, it was an emotional roller coaster, but in the end, when they finally won it, man, I still to this day, and being there in Wrigley Field for 3 days, catching all 3 games or catching 2 of the 3 games and just being around the vibe and the atmosphere and people that were just there with pictures of their deceased relatives and all this stuff, man. It was super emotional. And I'm just praying we get back there sooner rather than later.
I'm with you on that one, Crawly. No doubt about that. You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It is episode 86 of season number 3, remembering the World Series at Wrigley Field. Don't forget to listen. And please leave us one of those 5-star reviews. Also, you can email us, flythew670@gmail.com, and you can watch us, that's right, on the 670 The Score YouTube page. In this segment, Crawly talks to Mick Gillispie, play-by-play man for the Double-A Tennessee Smokies, to find out how the team did this season and what the prospects we need to be keeping our eye out for in 2025.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, we're happy to have our friend as we continue our tour of the Cubs minor league affiliates, Mick Gillispie, your play-by-play voice for the Tennessee Smokies. How you doing, Mick?
Great to talk to you.
Man, I got to tell you, you were, when it comes down to it, the Smokies were the defending champions and overall a really, really good season by the team.
Yeah, the regular season was the best winning percentage in franchise history, which was pretty fun because, it was the last year of the old stadium, which really wasn't that old, but 25 years old. And to end up 37 games over 500, it was really a lot of winning, and it was a ton of fun to win that many games.
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, the Smokies went 40-28, half a game behind the Barons. And then turn it on in the second half, 47-22, a .681 winning percentage. And so you were the Smokies were the only affiliate, Cubs affiliate, or even the big league club to make it in the postseason. And so you even got to call some postseason games.
Yeah, it would have been nice to, to have maybe some of those guys that were in Iowa in last place on the team, but that's not the way it worked out. It was, the team was really good, but when you get into the postseason, you got to have those difference makers. You got to have the Triantoses and the Alcantaras and the Shaws and and those kind of guys. Owen Casey was such a big part of our team last year, and we had BJ Murray on the roster, and he didn't even play, which was crazy because he was the MVP from the year before, but he had been injured, and I don't know what the directive was, but we got to the postseason and ended up losing to the eventual champs. The sad part about it to me is, and this isn't sour grapes. I mean, this is just kind of the way that the minor leagues are set up, but we lost the first half by a half a game. We had a game where we had to wear these, and I'm superstitious. I'm going to tell you that right now. Okay. Minor League Baseball sold this, or Major League Baseball sold this awful, when I'm telling you awful, complete crap promotion to some milk oak company or some, and every team had to be the milk oakers, right? So I don't know how they picked the day on that. Maybe the team did, but it was the last game of the first half. We wear these awful uniforms, right? And there's the very first inning, we have a collision with 2 outs and the bases loaded. Ezekiel Pagan ends up getting, smashed. He's out for a while. I mean, it was the worst horrific accident that I'd seen in baseball. The team that we're playing scores a bunch of runs. We come back, but we lose. The Barons lose, but they back into the playoff. But because they won the first half, just by half a game, they got to pick home field advantage, right? Well, we blow them out in the second half, like 15 games. So we end up like 14 and a half or 15 and a half. I forget what it is. Better than them, but they had home field advantage. So the series is tied. Game 3's tied of a 3-game series going into the 8th inning. They have home field advantage and they win. We had lost 1 game all year in that situation at home. We were 500 on the road, and I want to say it was like 12-1 or 13-1. And to me, it's like, how can you do that? Like, it's like, why can't you give the home field advantage? Can you imagine that in the big leagues?
No.
You're 15 and a half games better. And that is the difference, because the winner of that series was going to win the championship series, and they did, and we would have won it too. So it just stinks. It's the rules are bad. That's not fair, but you know what? It's the way that it worked out. And it doesn't always work out this way. There's another one where you could actually have the best record in the league and not make the playoffs because of some of these stupid rules that they have. But that one, to me, that this season, it's a shame that, that we didn't win another title. We did win the year before, and it was awesome. But if we would have had home field advantage, they wouldn't have beat us.
Yeah, in the season, you were 45-24 at home, 42-26 away. But in the second half, 22-8 at home. That's incredible. And so, when you take a look at, obviously being a playoff team, and like you said, if they would have gotten, home field advantage, maybe win the championship for a second year in a row, obviously you're going to have a lot of talented guys on the team. And when I look through, and you watch the games, just the amount of talent going through as far as in the Cubs top 30 prospects. Once again, for the second year in a row, you just saw a lot of guys, and a lot of guys who also got to develop a little bit more, but some of them made it to the majors. You had both the Cubs, the Buck O'Neil minor league player and pitcher of the year go through Tennessee. It was just a phenomenal collection of talent this year.
Yeah, that's been, the run for the last 3 years has been pretty phenomenal. With some of the prospects, and I've enjoyed it. It's been fun, winning a lot of games, seeing guys like Pete Crow Armstrong, Hollywood Pete, doing his thing, and you haven't gotten a chance to see Owen Casey yet, but if they don't trade him, I'm afraid they're going to trade some of these guys, and And it'd be a shame because there's some really good players there. But the risk is that the minor leagues are they're so watered down now. You don't really know what a guy's going to do. I mean, you look at Pete Crow Armstrong and Michael Busch in the big leagues, and you look at their like Triple-A and minor league stats, and it's like, so different, and I think that's because they're pushing these guys up so fast. So I don't know. I mean, I would suspect Owen Casey's going to be a great big leaguer. I would really think that, but who knows anymore.
Now, the one prospect that a lot of people are talking about is Matt Shaw, and he played third base for you guys, and he led the team in home runs with 14. I mean, he just looks so polished as even as a minor leaguer. I mean, there is talk that maybe if Nico Horner, no one's saying Nico Horner's getting traded or anything like that, but there's just stuff that people talk about during the offseason when things are a little bit slower. But when you see Matt Shaw, what do you see out of a guy like that? And do you think he's someone that could play second base at the major leagues?
Well, I mean, the Cubs are going to have to do something. I mean, they've got all these guys, these position players signed with big league contracts, and then they pushed all their prospects to Triple-A. And I just sit there and go, well, what's the game plan? I mean, it's you're either going to have to trade somebody or you're going to have to trade somebody else. And it may be somebody that's in the big leagues or it may be somebody that's not, but or are you just going to have a Triple-A team with all your prospects in it for another year? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you do have injuries, but sometimes you just look at the game plan and you try to figure that out, and it's hard to figure. Matt Shaw is a first-round pick, and what was impressive to me is coming out of college, they just basically shoot you right up to Double-A, and there was a time and day where you wouldn't do that. I mean, you couldn't go from college and be competitive, but there's a combo. College baseball is better because it's not development. They haven't turned it into a rec league, like the minor leagues are now, where it's like, well, I'm Crawly, I'm gonna go ahead, you're pitching the 7th, I don't care what the score is. Mick, you're going in the 8th, who cares if we win? And then in college, those are some intense games, man. I mean, they're managing to win every day, or you don't keep your job, right? And the players love that. They want to go out and play to win. And so now all of a sudden the college is a much better brand of baseball. It's real baseball. It's not this stuff that we're seeing in the minor leagues anymore. And so these guys go straight up, and there's a skill set that you don't get in college baseball that it just takes time to develop in the minor leagues, because it is a game that is skill related. I mean, you got to know what to do in a bunch of these situations, but getting to my point is that he was so impressive to me because when he was struggling playing baseball every day, he was still walking. He was still getting on base. And it takes a while for your body to adjust to going 56 games to playing 156, or 140 or whatever it is in the minors now. So I thought that was something that caught my eye. When he was struggling to get hits, he was still getting on base, and knowing your strike zone is one of the biggest things that any successful baseball player has. It's one of the things that you worry about with Pete Crow Armstrong, just being able to, know the difference between a ball and a strike. I mean, look at Javi,
Right.
and you can do that for a while, but if you don't know the difference between a ball and a strike and have good discipline, it'll catch up with you. And this guy's got great discipline. Defensively, he's good. I won't say he's great, but he's good. He's got power. And for a player his size, it is amazing, like kind of how he is able to maximize every little bit of strength to drive the ball, but he hits home runs. He's a pretty clutch player. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that second base spot. And it's not just him. It's James Triantos, who gets a ton of hits, I think is a little bit better defensively. But the Cubs' problem was more that they don't get enough hits, So, I mean, if they can add somebody to get them some more hits, and maybe some of the hits that go over the fence or the drive-in runs, maybe you substitute a little bit more defense for that. But I hate it for Nico because I look at that. I think he could have played shortstop too. And the Cubs are so locked in on Dansby Dansby better hit like he did towards the end of the season, or he's going to be the next Jason Hayward.
Oh God, I hope not.
Sorry to say that, Crawly, but it's
No, I hear you. Now, one guy that really always interested me because I saw him his first in Myrtle Beach down in Low A was Moises Ballesteros. And to me, he is just one of the you talk about knowing the difference between a ball and a strike, like his ability to recognize pitches and just spray the ball. I mean, I just really am super impressed. And to me, the question with Moises is whether he would, again, the problem, like you mentioned, was the lack of slug, but is he a guy that could potentially make it up to the majors very quickly this year?
I mean, I know some people love him. I love his hands. He's got real soft hands, makes great contact. He's a good hitter. And he has the potential to be a great hitter. The problem is defensively. I mean, he's just, maybe he's getting better, but he just didn't catch enough games, and he had too many holes defensively behind the plate that the Cubs, you just couldn't put him in the big leagues and expect him to be able to do the job, and I'm sure that they're probably putting him behind the plate as much as possible. But, it was like when it took a while for them to kind of say, hey, you know what, maybe this guy ought to catch more. I mean, it'd be like DH in first base, but he's not big enough to be a first baseman. And he didn't hit enough home runs to be a DH. So it was like, you would love to have that bat in the catcher spot. The Cubs don't have a lot of depth catching in the system, and they didn't even go out and draft any catchers, which was kind of surprising to me. So that tells me that maybe they're going to go out and sign one or trade for one. And honestly, in the whole game right now, it's not like there's a lot of catchers that are really good. There's guys that can hit and there's guys that can catch, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of guys that do both. The Cubs had Wilson Contreras, and it was odd to me. And I think I said it on your show. I didn't know why they just didn't sign him. I mean, just, was he perfect? No. But looking at where they are right now, if I was Ballesteros, I would just catch my butt off, man. I mean, I would just keep doing it until I got good at it. Because if he could ever get the defensive part down, and I mean, like, be pretty good defensively, the bat would be one of the best for a catcher in baseball.
Yeah. And the question is, would they use him as a DH and just straight up go that route is another option as well, and maybe catch one day a week or something, who knows? As far as the pitching is concerned, though, again, minor league player of the year, Brandon Birdsell, he started, 14 games, 3.63 ERA. He really turned a lot of heads this year. I think he really kind of developed really well down in Tennessee.
Love that he throws strikes, and he's got a four-seam fastball that when he gets over top of it and it stays in the zone, it's an optical illusion. And I can remember watching him, and he struggled at the beginning of the year because it took him a while to kind of get it to where it would stay, instead of drop. And I mean, he was giving up some long home runs and getting some big hits. And then all of a sudden it was like, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the weather. I don't know if it's just him getting loose. I don't know what it was, but you could tell when he kind of started to get that thing where he wanted it, where he could keep it, where it's all about spin to me. It's like you think it's going to be here, but it's really here, right? Because of the spin. And then he went to Double-A and got locked in on it. So he's a really good guy. He's a hard worker. And he always looked like a big league starter to me just because of the ability to throw strikes. And so many players, the whole way that the game is now is it's like, hey, go out there and throw as hard as you can every pitch, spin it as hard as you can every pitch. And then guys get hurt and they don't last very long. And to me, I would figure, like with Birdsell, just kind of the style that he has, it could be kind of like a Javier Assad, and just the aspect that, okay, you know what? I can go out there and throw strikes and get some outs, and I don't have to, throw the ball as hard as I can every time. I mean, I'm basically just trying to keep it up here above the bat zone, and I'll just get outs. I'm also curious to see what the adjustment to that is at the major league level, because you got much better hitters, can they adjust to that? Did they see the ball differently? But I'm pulling for him. He was a big part of the Smokies championship that they won 2 years ago, and someone that gives you some hope as a Cubs fan that, you could slot this guy into the starting rotation, and have somebody that could pitch there for a while.
Right. And another guy that you saw that was, not as big of a part, but he came up and he played with the Smokies a little bit early on in the season was Cade Horton. And, he came to Tennessee this year again, and he just impressed again. I mean, hopefully he can recover from his injury and be just as dominant. But, when you saw him start out this year, was it just more of the same from last year, or did it look like there was some improvement?
Yeah. Look, I love him, and it's a shame that he got hurt. And I'm not a fan of all these like pitch counts and all of that stuff, but he was the guy I was like, hey, put him in bubble wrap just because you don't want to see him get hurt. And I thought he could help the team this year. And obviously that, it was not a worst case scenario, but pretty bad where he kind of got hurt and we never saw him again. The tough part about this career, or not mine, but theirs, playing and being a super prospect like that, is when everybody's watching, it's like, okay, how many innings do I let this guy throw? How many do I not let him throw? Like, when do we move him from Double-A to Triple-A? When are we going to put him in the big leagues? Is there a game plan? Sometimes I feel like there's not a game plan, and then sometimes I do, and I think with him, they had a good game plan, and it just didn't work because he got injured. But, I can't blame them at all for just trying to limit the amount of innings he pitched. And it's a shame that he got hurt. And I wonder, how the injury is going to affect him moving forward, because it doesn't seem like this is an injury that's going to be like long-term. Right. And I think that part of it is that if it was somebody else, maybe you push him a little harder. But I think with him, it was like, look, this Cubs team at the big league level, unfortunately, wasn't good. They weren't contending. They got over 500 at the end of the year when everybody else was out and they didn't care anymore. When the games were on the line that mattered, they weren't any good. So why push this guy and get him to the big leagues and get him hurt?
Right. Speaking about getting to the big leagues, you had three guys for sure that started in Tennessee and made it to the big leagues. Kevin Alcantara got a cup of coffee. How about Ethan Roberts having some meaningful innings, and Porter Hodge? How impressed were you when you got to see Porter at the big league level and, starting in Double-A this year? And then he really became a big part of the turnaround from just an awful bullpen at the beginning of the season to being respectable, at least.
Yeah, I was really happy about that. I thought that was cool. I saw him as a starter. They moved him to the bullpen, and there were always flashes of really good pitching from him. And I just wondered, like, when are you going to like put all of this together and be the guy that you can be? I thought he could be a starter, really. I mean, I always liked Porter Hodge, but I didn't imagine that he was going to come to the big leagues and be that much of a difference maker. So good for him. I mean, it's a lot of this is how you how you go from Triple-A to the big leagues, or how you go from the minor leagues to the big leagues, how it translates. And he did a really good job, throwing strikes. He was, he looked confident. I'm sure it was nerve wracking. I remember he had the heart thing going there for a minute, but he held his own, and he did the thing that you want to see pitchers do, and that's throw strikes, move it around the zone. So I was impressed by him. Ethan Roberts, we saw kind of a flash of this before he was hurt, and he came back and was a big part of it. The guy that the Cubs traded to Tampa Bay, Hunter Biggie, I thought that guy was going to be a really, really big time closer, and I guess Tampa Bay did as well. And I was surprised that the Cubs didn't use him more. And I don't understand all the reasoning behind the roster. And I know there's more to it than we would know, right? I mean, there's options and money and, and other stuff. But if you put the players that are going to help you win in the big leagues, I would have figured he'd have been one of those guys. But I think they got a really good third baseman back. I know he didn't perform that way, but I think that I like him too. Paredes, I think that's a good move I mean, you get an all-star, so if he can ever put it together in Chicago, I think he can, but you gave up a really good pitcher. and seeing those other two guys get in there and do well was cool. And I was surprised that Alcantara got to the big leagues. Definitely a guy with some skill, definitely a guy that was dealing with some maturity issues, but an opportunity came and they moved him up there. And again, I don't know the ins and outs. I guess he was on the 40-man roster. Owen Casey's their best outfielder, and I'm just shocked that I haven't seen him there yet. But I think that Owen Casey I think Owen Casey's going to be, and maybe I'm totally off base here, but I think he is going to be a fixture in the Cubs outfield for a long time. So I'm excited to see that. And, the guy just does a lot of things well. And he's also got this bat that he just crushes the ball, man. He barrels everything up. So Alcantara's got, he's got a skill set too. But I think that the real guy to keep an eye on is Owen Casey.
We are definitely in Chicago here, waiting. Hopefully, now, Mick, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. A brand new stadium, and I keep looking around at the minor league affiliates. I know they're doing something in South Bend. They're doing some renovations. You guys are getting a new stadium. I mean, are you excited about the new stadium? And I hope to one day, they're going to name that the Mick Gillispie press box. That's what I see that going up there one of the, but how exciting is it for you to kind of get somewhere new with all the bells and whistles and stuff like that?
Yeah, I hope they don't name the press box after me. That normally means that you're really old or you're dead, right? It's exciting for the city. The old stadium was great too. It was just far out from where the city is, and our owner, Randy Boyd, is one of the most impressive people I've met in my entire life. He's just great. And this is his dream. He's always wanted to have the Knoxville Smokies back and have them in Knoxville. So the stadium looks fantastic. I actually went in there and got a picture in the booth, like while they were constructing everything, with a hard hat on and stuff. But it's not about, who's on the microphone or any of that stuff. It's about the fans and them having a really cool place to go watch games, and the players, that'll have a great venue and a great city to play games in. That it becomes one of the premier ballparks and cities in minor league baseball, and with great ownership and Randy Boyd, I don't know how you would want to play for anywhere else. And if you had a choice, so this will be a lot of fun. The Cubs are lucky that they have Randy Boyd as the owner of one of their affiliates.
Yeah, and I know they're already starting to plan out for next year. You talked about the championship in 2023, but they're gonna have the 1978 Smokies back. Tony La Russa coming back to Knoxville, so I think it's going to be an absolute fun season. I still think there's going to be a lot of great ball players, a lot of great prospects coming through Tennessee, and the new stadium. And you guys always have a lot of fun, different different giveaways and different themed days and cool jerseys, not Milk Oak jersey, but the Grateful Dead jerseys. Every time I see them, I'm like, oh my God, that looks so awesome. Or the posters and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys always just have it looks like you're always having fun in Tennessee.
Well, I'll tell you this right now. I do, man. I mean, it's been a flash how long things have gone for me and how quickly it has, because we have a great time there. And I've been fortunate just to be part of the organization. I grew up a Cubs fan, so I mean, it's been so much fun to just work with the Cubs directly, sometimes and indirectly, and also I never thought I would be in minor league baseball this long. There's been a few times where I've thought about doing other things, but it's just, and I do other things. I mean, I got like 15 different jobs, but they make it so much fun to be a part of their staff. I'm so fortunate because I have the best job in minor league baseball. I really do. Great fans and people that care about the team and that like the broadcast, which I'm obviously a part of. And when we won last year, it was just really special because the team hadn't won in forever. And then to kind of mark that off and say, hey, we did this, and how special that team was. And then now going into a new stadium, and I've never been part of this before. What's it going to be like being in a new stadium, in a new town, even though it's the same area, but it's, we weren't in Knoxville. Now we are. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to baseball for sure.
And you're always still talking baseball. You got a podcast out. Why don't you let our listeners know where they could find you on YouTube and where they could find you on the socials?
Yeah, man, hang out. We try to have a good time on the Cubs baseball channel on YouTube, at Broadcaster Mick. But I've got a video dropping tomorrow morning. I try to do one every day. There just hasn't been. I'll be honest with you, Crawly. I don't want to get on there and sound negative all the time, and it just feels like right now it's hard to look at what's going on and be real positive. Now, I think that there's potential for some big changes to happen once the World Series is over. And so, I want the Cubs team, not just because it's good for business, but just good for my heart, man, to see the Cubs have a roster that I feel comfortable with and say, hey, this team can win the World Series. And I didn't feel like that the last few years, and we didn't. It stinks not going into the playoffs. So at the Cubs baseball channel, we're going to try to solve the world's problems, or at least the Cubs world's problems, and we'll do it with you guys. So come check it out there and hang out with us. Like and subscribe.
100%, Mick. I love the show, and thank you so much for jumping on and giving us a few minutes of your time, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you, Crawly.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast, season 3, episode 86, remembering the World Series at Wrigley. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. You can email us, flythew670@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can watch us on the 670 The Score YouTube page. All right, Crawly, for the first time since 1981, the Dodgers and Yankees are going at it in the World Series. It's time for us to circle the bases as we look at the biggest stories from the first 2 games that happened on Friday and Saturday night out in L.A.
Yeah, starting pitching was the story of Friday night. In a postseason that has seen starters go about 4 or 5 innings, openers, bullpen games. Dustin, do you ever think you'd see a bullpen game in the postseason? Like in the championship series or something like that? I mean, to me, it was absolutely weird. But Garrett Cole was going for the Yankees, Jack Flaherty for the Dodgers. Flaherty pitched 5 1/3 innings, gave up 2 runs on 5 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks. Cole lasted 6 innings, gave up 1 run, 4 hits, 4 Ks. Only mistake to Cole came in the 5th when he gave out a 1-out triple to Enrique Hernandez. Will Smith hit a sac fly to put the Dodgers up 1-0. For Flaherty, the mistake came in the top of the 6th. 1 out and 1 on. ALCS MVP Giancarlo Stanton homers to give the Yankees a 2-1 lead. Dustin, how about this stat right here? Stanton is the first player in postseason history with multiple streaks of homering in 4 straight games. He did it 5 times in 2020 and 4 games in 2024. I mean, that's unbelievable. So I think I sit there, like I said, I really enjoyed watching an old school starting pitching matchup. I don't like bullpen games. I don't like openers in the postseason. I don't like guys coming in for 2 innings and then rotating.
No, it was classic. It was classic baseball, no doubt about that. I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to see an opener in the World Series. No.
Now, a big defensive miscue. Bottom of the 8th, Yankees still up 2-1, 1 out. Shohei Ohtani hit one that just misses a home run by about 2 feet. The ball bounces right into the glove of Soto. So he got a good hop, but for some reason, he kind of double clutched it, crow hopped a little bit. He threw the ball to Gleyber Torres at second. The ball bounces on the ground off Torres' glove, and Ohtani, this is why you pay him the big bucks. He alertly runs to third, and that extra 90 feet was huge, as Mookie Betts would hit a sac fly and the Dodgers would tie it up. But again, if he's not paying attention, if he's kind of looking around, they don't get that run. They don't tie it up. So for Ohtani, that was big. Now, Dustin, do you remember the name Jeffrey Mayer?
Yes, sir.
For those that don't, Game 1 ALCS 1996, Jeter, the Yankees were trailing the Baltimore Orioles 4-3, bottom of the 8th. Derek Jeter hits one to deep right fielder Tony Tarasco. Looks like he's going to make the catch, but a kid with a mitt, Jeffrey Meyer, reaches over, pulls the ball into the stands. Now, this is the postseason. They have an umpire in the right field and left field, but he ruled it a home run. Tarasco's going nuts. Manager Davey Johnson gets ejected, and the Yankees win. They would walk it off on the 11th on a Bernie Williams home run. After that, Dustin, they put a bar so that you couldn't, like a metal bar so that you couldn't do that anymore, reach over like that. Well, on Friday night, almost the exact same thing happened, but this time the Yankees wouldn't get the benefit of the call. Top of the ninth, 2 out, former White Sox Michael Kopech on the mound. Gleyber Torres up the bat, former Cub prospect. He hits one to center field. Now, Jeffrey Meyer was a kid. This was an adult with a mitt. He reaches over and catches the ball. The announcer, Joe Davis, originally thought it's a home run, but then he kind of realized what had happened. He goes, that ball is gone with the help of a fan. Mm-hmm. And so, unlike 1996, now we have review, and it was ruled a ground rule double. I don't know if you saw this, Dustin. I've heard of both, but I don't know if he was asked to leave or he chose to leave, but that guy amps great in a hurry.
Yeah, I probably a little bit of both, right? It's probably in your best interest to get the heck out of here, right? And if not, we're going to move you out.
Yeah, the thing I laughed is that by interfering with it, he actually helped, in my opinion, the Dodgers. Now, if all of a sudden, they would have called it a home run, the guy would have been killed. I think he would have been beaten to death. But the way that it worked, I mean, if that ball, let's say it bounces off the wall and let's say Torres gets a triple out of that, that could have been completely different. But I thought, oh my God, obviously it's for Cub fans. It was a little bit different. Bartman was in foul ground and Alou reached in. Bartman didn't reach over. He never really did anything wrong, but oh my God, that is just so nerve-wracking to think about that. And that's why when I sit there and I go to a game, sometimes I'll go to a seat, like I'll be like right along either the first base or the third base line. I say, hey, if the Cub player is going to make a catch, stay out of the way. But if it's the opposing team, then start like slapping his glove or something, But Dustin, we got to talk about no fear of Judge. Now with Torres at second and Juan Soto up, the Dodgers decide to walk Aaron Soto to face Aaron Judge. Judge popped out to short. It ends the threat. These are Judge's postseason numbers right now.
Yeah, they are awful.
You're talking about he is 6 for 40 in the 2024 postseason. His career postseason average is .199. He's played 55 games in the postseason and struck out 85 times. I mean, this is the guy that's going to be the MVP for the AL, and they are walking people. Now, it's not like they're just walking any old guy, but it's killing them right now that they're just being like, yeah, we'll just face Judge. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, right?
Right. And it was, it was the right move. It paid off. And it was the second time that in the postseason, a Yankees opponent walked Soto to face Judge. So, that's kind of where we are now. Now, we got to talk about Boone's boner. Now, don't think dirty thoughts. I'm going with the Merkel's boner here as a mistake, meaning a mistake. Game 1 goes to extra innings. The Yankees strike first with 1 out. Chaz Chisholm singles, steals second. Anthony Rizzo is intentionally walked to set up the double play. Chisholm steals third, so now the Dodgers have to play their infield in. Anthony Volpe grounded one to shortstop Tommy Edman, but he kind of drops the ball in the transfer because he's in. Dodgers can't turn the double play. Chisholm scores. New York is up 3-2 in the 10th. Jake Cousin comes into the game for Luke Weaver. He gets the first out, but then walks Gavin Lux, and then Tommy Edman, who is turned into the Superman of the postseason, he singles. And Brett Boone, Yankees manager, goes to his pen, and he calls for Nestor Cortez to face lefty Shohei Ohtani. Dustin, Cortez hadn't pitched in 37 days. Last time was September 18th when he was put on the IL September 25th with a left elbow flexor strain. So Ohtani, Cortez gets the job. He gets Ohtani to fly out for the second out. Boone then calls for the intentional walk of righty Mookie Betts to load the bases so Cortez can face lefty Freddie Freeman. Freeman who hadn't hit a home run in 41 games since hurting his ankle, hits the first walk-off grand slam in World Series. The Dodgers win game 1, 6-3. But Dustin, a lot of Yankee fans are wondering why Boone went with Cortez instead of lefty Tim Hill, who had a 1.29 ERA in 8 postseason games with 2 strikeouts instead of a guy who hadn't pitched in over a month. Did you think that was a huge mistake?
Well, it's definitely a question, right? I mean, it's definitely something that can be asked, especially since that's what happened, right? I mean, boom goes the dynamite on the first pitch. Cortez was an ad. He wasn't in the earlier series, wasn't in the ALCS, so he was an add to this whole thing. So of course he's going to be second guessed, no doubt about it. I mean, absolutely he's going to be second guessed.
I just know if I was a Cub fan and the shoe was on the other foot, I would have been pissed. I'd been like, well.
Oh yeah, but I mean, if the other guy gives up the grand slam, why wouldn't you use Cortez? He's rested up. He's got a strong arm. He's been, you can't win. You could, the guy hits a home run. You can't win. They would have, no matter what, he would have been second guessed.
To me, if a guy hasn't played in competitive baseball in a month, there's nothing you can do to simulate being in a postseason game. You can take as many pitches as you want. You can do as many side sessions, whatever you want. He's not ready. I mean, it was clear to me that, he didn't have his best stuff. Right. So I don't know. I would have gone with the guy that had been pitching well. That's what I would have done. Again, that's why we have these programs to second guess things, right?
Right. Again, I don't know the splits. Is Cortez face Freeman? Did the other pitcher face Freeman? Had the other pitcher been in any high leverage situations like that at Cortez? There's so many variables that they have all this data on that we don't have necessarily the same access to. But listen, no matter what happens, when a guy hits a walk-off grand slam, there's going to be second guessing going on.
Now, talking about that home run, Kirk Gibson, Freddie Freeman comps. With that walk-off home run, the comparisons began instantly with Kirk Gibson's walk-off home run in 1988, starting with Joe Davis's great call, a little nod to Vince Scully.
Yeah, it was a great call. But let's just get one thing straight. Okay, this is getting overblown a little bit, this whole comparison. They're both Dodgers. Okay, they're both Dodgers. It was both left-handed hitters. Okay, the temperature. Who gives a rat's rear end about the temperature? Okay, I mean, give me a break. The ball kind of sort of went to the same-ish area. They both went to the right field. Okay, but Kirk Gibson hadn't had an at-bat. That was Freddie Freeman's fifth at-bat. That's so different. That's what makes it so different. It's cool. I'm not trying to rain on the story. I'm not trying to, but the moment is different. Kirk Gibson hadn't even had a plate appearance that night. That was the fifth plate appearance for Freddie Freeman. Both awesome accomplishments. But it's not, it's apples to oranges. It's not apples to apples.
I'm going to agree with you on that. And I'm going to say, hey, look, go to YouTube and look at it. And if you look at it, number one, like we said, Nestor Cortez hadn't pitched in a month. Whereas Kirk Gibson had to face a Hall of Famer at the peak of his career in Dennis Eckersley. Not only that, Freddie Freeman had 5 days to rest his ankle? And he said he was feeling pretty good. Kirk Gibson, go look at that. He could barely round the bases.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised they didn't have to have a pinch runner like it was 16 in softball.
He had a bad hamstring. He had a bad knee. He was hobbling. He looked awful. To me, yeah, I get what they're, I thought it was overblown as well.
Very, very cool story, though. Great game.
Absolutely.
Great way for the World, great game for the World Series to start. But, I mean, the specialness about what Kirk did is that he came off the bench and hadn't had an at-bat. That's what made things different. All right, let's move on to game number 2, Crawly.
Saturday night, early on, home run derby. The runs came early and often in game 2 via the long ball, bottom of the second. Tommy Edman, of course, homers to put the Dodgers up 1-0. Juan Soto, cha-ching, answers back, top of the third with the solo home run of his own, tie the game. Doesn't stay tied long. 2 outs, Mookie Betts singles, and Teoscar Hernandez hits a 2-run blast. Freddie Freeman makes it back-to-back jacks, 2 runs in less than 24 hours, and the Dodgers take a 4-1 lead. Rondon would be pulled with 1 out in the 4th. But Dustin, 3 home runs in the first 3 innings. That was something else.
Yeah, it was exciting. That thing got off to a great start. I watched every pitch of this game.
Now, a tale of 2 pitchers. It looked like a good matchup on paper. Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus White Sox Carlos Rodon, former White Sox. Both had similar looking postseasons coming into game 2. They both struggled in the first game they pitched in the division series. They pitched well in their next 2 starts, and they both gave up solo home runs early in this game, but that's where the similarities end. Rodon gave up another 2-run home run in the bottom of the 3rd. He'd only pitched 3 1/3 innings, gave up 4 runs on 6 hits with those home runs. While Yamamoto, on the other hand, locked it down. After that home run to Juan Soto, he retired the next 11 hitters he faced, before Dave Roberts went to his pen. Yamamoto pitched 6 1/3 innings, gave up 1 run, 2 walks, 4 Ks. This is what the Dodgers believed they were getting when they signed him to a 12-year, $325 million contract. Dustin, you remember how bad
he was spectacular. He was really good.
I wanted him on the Cubs so badly. Could you imagine if you'd had Yamamoto and Shota? Oh my God.
Well, that would be cake and ice cream, Crawly. One at a time.
Hey, Dodgers got Shohei and Yamamoto. They seem to be eating the ice cream and the cake.
Yeah.
Now, a little 9th inning drama, down 3-1. The Yankees gave it one more run in the 9th. Blank Trinian on the mound. Juan Soto hits a leadoff single, and a wild pitch moves him to second. Aaron Judge does what he does best, strikes out swinging. 3rd strikeout of the night. Giancarlo Stanton singled to score. Soto making a 4-2 game. Chaz Chisholm singled, and for the 2nd time in the game, Anthony Rizzo was hit by a pitch. Go take a look at this. If you looked at the stat sheet,
he didn't move an inch, man. He kind of leaned into that one.
That's what he always does. That's what he did.
He leaned
with the Cubs.
into it. Yeah, he leaned into it.
He was in the Cubs all
in Little League. They call you out for that.
In the all-time record books of Cubs baseball, Anthony Rizzo has the most. He's the franchise leader in hit by pitches.
Yep.
And so if you look at his line for the game, he was 0 for 1 with the strikeout, but he walked and was hit by a pitch twice. So he was on base 3 times. So Trinian strikes out Anthony Volpe, 2 outs, bases still loaded. David Roberts goes to his pen. Lefter Alex Vesia into the game to face lefty Austin Wells. Aaron Boone counters with right-handed pinch hitter Jose Trevino to get the lefty-righty matchup. But Trevino flies out to center. 1 pitch is all it takes. He gets him to fly out. The 1 pitch save. Dodgers hold home field advantage. They got a 2-0 lead as this one heads to the Big Apple. But Dustin, we got to talk. Show no. As excited as the Dodgers fans were for the win, dark cloud hung over the stadium after the game. Bottom of the 7th, 2 outs. Shohei Ohtani caught stealing second. He's writhing on the ground in pain, holding his left arm. Dodgers announced that Ohtani had left the inning with a left shoulder subluxation, a partial dislocation, undergoing an MRI Sunday. Looks like things look good. He's going to be in the lineup. But Dustin, you're going to be watching that carefully to see how he looks.
Of course. But Crawly, why in the world was he trying to steal a base?
Because
when did he? Who taught him how to slide? Like you don't land on your hand, you land on your hip. You don't land on. I mean, it was bad. Okay, and if he, I don't know that Dave Roberts sent him. I think he probably green lighted it himself and took off going. But that slide was awful. And if Dave Roberts sent him, Dave Roberts should be fired.
Well, let's put it a couple ways. Number one,
I know the game wasn't over, but
right.
I mean, come on.
It was 4-1, Dustin, and the Yankees had the tying run on second. Okay, they had the tying run in second in the 9th. If you would have had that extra run, if Shohei would have scored on the next, let's say he was safe and they scored, it would have been one more insurance run. And so you don't think that the Yankees, you're not going to give up trying to score runs in a 4-1 ball game. Now, if you're telling me it's 8-1, I wouldn't even have Shohei Ohtani in the game. But it's 4-1. You got to try to keep scoring. You got to keep going.
You and I are gonna disagree on
Dustin,
that.
He had over 50 home runs or 50 stolen bases in the season. He knows how to steal bases. He knows how to slide. I don't know what happened on that one, but you sit there and you assume that he knows what he's doing. Again, 50 stolen bases.
Right. Well, the good news is he's going to be in the game, right? And that's good for everybody, including the fans, right? That's the good news. He's going to be in there. And that's all that matters. So Crawly, I mean, what do you think? Is this series going back to LA? Do you think the Dodgers can win on the road, or is this going to be wrapped up pretty quickly? And by the next time we're talking, we're going to have a Dodgers World Series to talk about.
Well, Dustin, we take a look and each team has a big 3, right? And so the Dodgers have, Shohei, Mookie Betts, and Freeman. And the Dodgers have Soto, Judge, and Stanton. But one of those guys hasn't held up his end of the bargain, and that's Aaron Judge. And until he starts playing, this is going to hurt the Yankees. I don't care what anyone says. The other 3, the Dodgers' big 3, they're playing well. And Aaron Judge is absolutely awful right now. And if he doesn't pick it up, then it's not going back to LA.
Yeah, well, I hope for us fans it is going back to LA, but you're right. Aaron Judge is the difference. That's a wrap. Don't forget to download. Don't forget to review. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate that. Also, don't forget you can look at us on the Score YouTube page. Crawly, enjoy the next couple of games, and we'll be back together real soon.
Still rooting for Rizzo because he wore the blue pinstripes before he wore the black pinstripes. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!